everyone and welcome! So it seems like people enjoy listening to stories from alternative League of Legends universes. And even though we got a lot more skins with stories to cover, an incredible amount of you guys asked me to cover the full story of Pentakill. And because their story isn't one of the shortest, let's dive into how this band came to be. Lead singer of heavy metal sensation Pentakill, Karthus sings in the voice of a fallen angel, made of freshly polished chrome and dynamite that eats other dynamite. His vocals explode the sun in the sky, igniting the flame of metal within the hearts of all who hear. When Pentakill needed a female vocalist, the heavens parted and a literal angel of rock fell to earth, taking up her sword mic for the eternal glory of heavy metal. Pentakill's gigantic lead guitarist and the titan of the old world, Mordekaiser rocks with the fury of an epoch lost to time. Bigger than a two-story house, his guitar overflows with heavy metal licks rebuking the gods themselves. Good drummers have rhythm, huge body counts, and are accursed Vikings with an insatiable desire to kill. Pentakill's Olaf is a very good drummer. Never tell Sona of Pentakill that keyboards aren't metal. Her instrument is filled with living barbed wire and a sonic scream loud enough to bring other lesser musical genres crashing to their knees. Yorick was resurrected with the undying soul of heavy metal inside him, for the singular purpose of joining Pentakill and melting faces with his bass guitar. He can also summon an army of roadie ghouls, a handy trick for any seasoned stage performer. When the sky in the far north of the Freljord grows dark, and warriors gather around the Heartfire embers, they sometimes speak of a deathly night on the ice, of murderers' rage unbound. It is a tale only spoken of in hushed awed whispers. Some claim it is no more than a legend invented to frighten youngsters. Others claim that even to speak of it is to invite the return of those metal warriors from their tour of the realms beyond. None live to tell of this grim night, but sometimes a reckless tale-teller speaks of a berserk X-Man reaping lives with his axe. They whisper that not even his brothers could restrain his fury. Only by bringing a mountain down upon the metal giant was his rampage halted. Thus did Pentakill's last live performance end. Accounts of Kael's arrival in Runeterra variously speak of her born by a fiery comet that split the sky, or straddling the grid of a glittering serpentine dragon. These are just two of the legends of how Kael came to walk among mortals. Gleaming in jagged warplate, she was a golden warrior goddess from a strife-torn world in search of allies to fight an epic war against the diabolical hordes of her faithless sister. Planet Earth failed to produce warriors of metal, so she traveled to Runeterra in search of warriors of metal. So rarefied was Kael's divine speech that she could only communicate via grand symphonic metal operas that told of her plight. The depthless sorrow of these operatic airies pierced the hearts of all who heard them, and her listeners were frequently overcome with such overwhelming melancholy that they simply dropped dead at the end of her performance. But since each song was typically many hours long, they had time enough to put their affairs in order before death took them. Yet for all the heart-rending emotion contained in her lyrics, none of her audience could truly understand the depth of her woes. No one could hear the sorrow of her existence without immediately perishing. No one except Karthus. After the disastrous end of their last live performance, where Mordekaiser destroyed the entirety of the Freljordian crowd, Karthus gave the fateful order for Olaf to drum the world splitter rhythm that sundered the land and brought down the icy realm's highest peak upon Mordekaiser. As the rock of the mountain cascaded down, the band fled to far corners of Runeterra to escape the wrath of Freljordian battle queens and the raft of inevitable blood feuds. Karthus pitched up in Bilgewater, earning a crust as a hooded recruiter of funeral dirges. This had an unexpected health benefit to natives of Bilgewater, as people started looking after themselves rather than have to put their families through such an ordeal. So Karthus toured the most squalid and fauted dive bars, to sing at the drunken wakes of murdered pirates instead. What with grim dirges being a vast improvement on sea shanties. A slow descent into madness and obscurity beckoned until the radiant form of Kale arrived in Bilgewater. She heard the depthless well of misery in his despairing lyrics, and knew Karthus alone could understand her own sorrow. What followed was a drunken woe-off, a night of debauchery, gothic poetry, and operatic singing that saw the men and women of the Slaughter Dogs hurl themselves into the monster-filled ocean rather than listen to their maudlin duets. In the aftermath, Karthus and Kale pledged the vocalist's oath to return stronger than ever. After all, shared woe is better than solitary woe. It would be the comeback tour to end all comeback tours. The hooded and hunched figure of Yorick headed south from the bloody carnage of the Freljord, and did not stop until he reached the sun-bleached wastes of Shurima. Sunlight was something new to Yorick, something he avoided for fear of people recoiling from a face not even a mother could love. He helped excavate the tombs of long-dead emperors, which allowed him to spend a great deal of his time in the darkness underground, something his fellow diggers certainly appreciated. His unique base was the perfect tool to crush the soft rock of Shurima, but often had the side effect of liquefying the sand, to a degree where many of the workers excavating the tombs were buried alive. To many of these buried souls, this was preferable to enduring another moment of conversation with a man who could literally bore rock. After being forcibly ejected from dig sites all across Shurima, and months spent deep underground with long-dead princes, Yorick decided that he too desired to be buried in the sands. He dug deep into the bedrock to craft his own shadowed mausoleum, and there he interred himself within a lifeless tomb, intending to pass the eons in splendid isolation. And so Yorick slept beneath the desert, until Karthus and Kale praised open his tomb. The two singers did nothing to disabuse Yorick of his idea that eons had passed, and that all who desired him dead were themselves now dead. The mortal realm was, they told him, once again ready for Pentakill. The entombment of Mordekaiser beneath the mountain of Freljord had inspired Sona, and while the other members of the band split to the far corners of Runeterra in despair, she was consumed with the desire to craft soaring symphonic rock operas. She toured the grandest temples of the world, and beyond. But none of the acoustics were powerful enough to satisfy Sona's need for the most cosmically resonant sound. The great glacier temples of the Freljord were now denied her, so Sona took ship with the doomed crew of the Serpent's Feast to a series of volcanic islands in uncharted waters east of Bilgewater. The Dread crew swiftly departed as Sona set up her keyboards and began to sculpt the island with sonic brutality. She played the very notes of creation, and dragged volcanic islands from the depths as they rained lava to form titanic organ pipes to further magnify Sona's playing. So powerful were her notes that they traveled between worlds and sank entire continents. A planned gig in Atlantis had to be cancelled. Encircled by mighty volcanoes, Sona set the sky ablaze with hellfire dragged from the heart of the planet. Yet, as awesome as it was, her playing needed more. It needed the demonic wailing of unearthly guitars and the quaking thunder of drums and bass. And that's when the burning fairy-bearing Karthus, Yorick and Kale ran around on Sona's basalt ring of fire. Though it was against every instinct he possessed, Olaf did not stay and die under the mountain with Mordekaiser. With Yorick heading south, Olaf's favorite drinking partner was gone, so to mourn his survival of what he always believed was to be his final performance, he sought to drink himself to death with the deadliest booze of Runeterra. He found a fellow named Gragas, and ended up in the depths of Zone with him, drinking potent samp cocktails, bragging of his glory days, and daring camp jacket thugs to take him on. He readily found ways in which to play his trade as a professional hitter of things, and soon found himself embroiled in underground golem fight clubs. Up against chem-powered golems, Olaf found his natural talent of pounding drums was also good for pounding mechanical giants to pieces. He sought out the most dangerous opponents in fight after fight, eventually falling under the metal hammer of Drago, one of Victor's most lethal creations. Just as his foe was about to deliver the death blow, a piercing veil shattered the crystalline globe containing the golem's transplanted brain. Bellowing in rage at this denial of death, Olaf surged to his feet, ready to pound again. He found himself face to skull with his old lead singer. Olaf would live, and he would drum again. When the mountain fell on Mordekaiser, he took it as a sign from the gods of metal that his demonically ordained task to bring metal to the masses was done, that he achieved full metal. His power chords had so shredded the very fabric of the world that the universe smote him with the mountain, a fitting end to the High Priest of metal. But Mordekaiser knew he would be reborn, rising from the molten ruins of the fallen peaks as the once and future king of metal. But as time passed, his weight became a slumber. The crushing mountain was shunned by those who lived in its dark shadow, an evil peak of black metal and cursed rock. Upon its highest summit, the gleaming obsidian haft of a snarling axe protruded from the rock. Legends grew around this cursed place. Legends telling that whoever drew the axe from the mountain would be the one to reunite the heralds of the new age of metal. When the mountain finally shuddered and fell, a brazen god of rock was revealed. As Mordekaiser rose to meet the giant who had drawn the axe from the rock, he saw his old bandmate accompanied by a fiery Hellion Valkyr from beyond. Karthus held out his axe, its razor strings shivering with anticipation. "The band's back together," said the Death Singer. And this was the full story of Pentakill. Just like the Project series and the Star Guardians, this was an alternative universe, and these events don't affect the canon lore. And yet it is pretty cool to see the narrative team going wild with stories similar to that of Brutal Legend. However, that's it for this video. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, we do have videos for the Project series and the Star Guardian line. Just be aware that those are really long stories that practically turn into movies. But if you'd like to stay close on the social side, feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Discord. I decided I'm going to hunt down more Twitter followers, so just one click would make me really happy. I offer video game memes in return. Of course, massive shout out to our patrons for going the extra mile. May you shred eternally. And with that, thank you all so much for being here and for your support. You know I really appreciate it. And as always, thank you, come again.